My name is Andrew. I'm 22, and for most of my early adult life I lived in a small rented apartment at the edge of the city, the kind of place where the windows face the tram tracks, and every morning you wake up to the rattling sound of metal wheels and half-asleep commuters rushing to jobs they probably don't even like. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt stable, predictable, safe. Or, at least it did until I met her. Her name was Elena. We crossed paths in the most ordinary way possible, through a mutual friend at a small gathering I didn't even want to attend. I remember walking in late, annoyed, planning to leave early, when I noticed her sitting near the balcony doors, holding a cup of tea instead of wine, wearing a calm expression that didn't match the noise around her. She looked detached, but in a soft, thoughtful way, and something about that pulled me in. We started talking, first out of politeness, then out of curiosity, and then because the conversation somehow became the only thing I cared about that evening. She wasn't loud or overly charming, or trying to impress anyone. She had this quiet confidence, the kind that makes you want to keep asking questions just to hear more of her voice. By the end of the night, something inside me had shifted. The city didn't feel as gray anymore. Our connection grew quickly after that. Too quickly, maybe. We started seeing each other almost every day, long walks, late-night talks, simple dinners in my tiny kitchen where she laughed at how terrible I was at cooking. She filled my space with warmth in a way I didn't know I needed. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I had finally found the kind of person you build a future with. The kind you trust without thinking twice. The kind you don't question. I was wrong. The first cracks appeared subtly. A sudden change in how often she checked her phone. A different tone in her voice when she talked about work. A new coworker whose name kept popping up in casual stories, always with a slightly too bright smile. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just insecure, tired, overthinking. But the truth has a way of leaking through even the smallest holes. One night, she came to my apartment later than usual. She said she'd had a long meeting. She said she was exhausted. She said she just wanted to sleep. But when she hugged me, I noticed a faint scent of a men's cologne that wasn't mine, that cool, sharp kind that lingers on clothes even after hours. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was just from the office air or the bus or someone sitting too close. Lies are easy when you want them to be, but the next clues weren't so gentle. Messages she didn't want me to see. Sudden extra shifts, a new habit of keeping her phone face down, a nervousness in her eyes when I asked simple questions. Then came the moment that shattered everything. One rainy Thursday evening, her phone lit up while she was in the shower. Normally I wouldn't have looked, but the name on the notification was the same coworker she'd mentioned a dozen times, and the previewed message, short, direct, unmistakably intimate, left no room for doubt. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't need to. The truth was already screaming at me. My chest felt hollow, and for a few minutes I just stood there, staring at the glowing screen, listening to the water running behind the bathroom door. My hands were shaking, not from anger, not yet, but from that sickening mix of disbelief and clarity, the kind that flips your world upside down in a single heartbeat. She came out moments later, wrapped in a towel, smiling in a way that now felt painfully fake. She didn't notice the phone. She didn't notice my expression. She talked about dinner, about plans, about nothing. And I watched her, realizing that the person I trusted most had been living a second life right in front of me. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't shout, or accuse, or demand explanations. I simply lay awake long after she fell asleep beside me, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me slowly shift, not break, but harden. Because betrayal doesn't just hurt. It changes you. And in the silence of that dark room, with the rain tapping against the window and the evidence lying inches away on her phone, a single thought formed clearly in my mind: if she could destroy everything we had so easily, Then I could destroy everything she thought she'd built with him. I didn't sleep the night after I discovered the message. I kept replaying every moment of our relationship, every smile she gave me, every time I trusted her without hesitation. And the more I thought about it, the more everything she ever said began to feel rehearsed, like I had been living in a carefully arranged illusion. One she curated to keep me calm while she drifted somewhere else. By morning, my mind wasn't foggy or confused. It was sharp, focused, and the anger that had been quietly brewing overnight settled into something colder, something controlled. I wasn't going to confront her with tears or arguments or desperate questions. I wasn't going to ask why. People who cheat always have excuses ready, and I didn't want to hear a single one. I wanted the truth, all of it. Not the version she'd feed me, but the real one hiding behind her smiles. So I began with the simplest step, observation. For the next few days, I acted exactly the same, calm, loving, unchanged. If she noticed anything different, she didn't show it. Maybe she thought I didn't suspect a thing. Maybe she thought she was clever enough to keep both lives running without them crossing. Maybe she underestimated me. She kept going to late meetings with that same tired story she repeated every week. She'd come home with that faint cologne lingering on her clothes, her hair slightly messy, her voice softer than usual. She didn't realize I noticed everything. And while she played her part, I started gathering information. First, her schedule. She had a work group chat on her laptop that she often forgot to close. I learned the real meeting times, the real deadlines, the names of the people involved. And just as I expected, most of her supposed late meetings didn't exist on the actual schedule. Second, the coworker, Daniel. The name from the message. He worked on the same floor, joined the company 6 months ago, and had a reputation for being charming in a superficial way. The kind of guy who flirts because it's easy. The kind of guy who knows exactly what to say, people who crave attention. It didn't take much to understand how it started, but knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof. So one evening, when she went to finish a project, I followed her. Not closely, not stupidly. I waited 3 minutes after she left, then took a cab instead of walking. I stayed across the street, blending in with the people heading home from work, pretending to scroll through my phone. And then I saw her stepping out of the building where she definitely did not work, wearing the same coat she always wore on our dates. She wasn't alone. Daniel walked up beside her. They didn't touch at first. They looked around, checked the corners, and once they thought the world wasn't looking, she leaned her head on his shoulder in a way she never did with me, like she belonged there. They walked down the street together, laughing quietly, moving in sync. At one point she reached for his hand, and he pulled her closer. A part of me twisted painfully, but another part, the part that had hardened, just watched, cold, silent. I didn't follow them to wherever they were going. I didn't need to. What I'd seen was enough. On the cab ride home, I stared at the city lights passing by and made a decision. I wouldn't confront her until I knew exactly how deep this betrayal went, and more importantly, until I knew how to make both of them feel what they had done. The next step was gathering leverage. I started recording her contradictions, dates that didn't align, messages she tried to hide, little lies she told without blinking. I dug deeper into Daniel as well, social media, workplace rumors, past relationships. The more I read, the more obvious it became that he wasn't simply someone she fell for. He was someone who actively pursued her, someone who enjoyed attention from women already in relationships, someone who thought consequences were for other people. It didn't take long before I discovered something else. Daniel had ambitions at work, big ones. He wanted a promotion that was about to open, and he was already bending rules to get close to the manager leading the selection. And Elena, she had access to documents in her department that could affect internal decisions. She had always been trusted by her supervisors. She had a clean record. Until now, I didn't plan to ruin their lives with rage. I planned to do it with precision. But before any of that, I needed one more thing: confirmation directly from them. Something undeniable. Something I could use when the moment came. And fate delivered it sooner than I expected. 2 nights later, Elena left her phone on my couch while she took another urgent call in the kitchen. It wasn't locked. She trusted me that much. A new message from Daniel popped up. It wasn't poetic or emotional or even romantic. It was simple, direct, blunt, double quotes: tonight, same place. And her reply said 5 minutes earlier, yes, I can't stop thinking about you. My hands didn't shake this time. I took a quiet breath, put the phone back exactly where she left it, and let a slow, controlled smile form, not out of happiness, but out of certainty. Now I had everything I needed. The game had officially begun. I didn't go to work the next morning. I told my manager I had a fever. But the truth was simpler. I needed the entire day to think, plan, and prepare. What I was about to do wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional revenge. It was strategy, calm, methodical, and controlled. They had taken something from me without hesitation. Now I was going to take something from them that mattered far more. The first step was understanding the full picture. I already knew where they met, what time, and how often. But I needed to know the patterns behind their decisions, the ones they thought were invisible. When people cheat, they create timelines, habits, and secret routines. Patterns, even small ones, always reveal weaknesses. So I spent the morning mapping their meetings. Each time Elena said she was working late, each excuse she'd given me, each night she returned home with that silent guilt lodged somewhere behind her carefully measured smile. And side by side, I placed Daniel's work schedule, the nights he left early, the times he stayed late. The overlap was unmistakable. Every Thursday, every second Tuesday, sometimes Sundays, but only when she told me she needed space or time to reset. I wasn't angry anymore. Seeing it laid out so clearly actually made me feel something else, almost relief. It confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't an accident or a moment of weakness. This was deliberate, planned, thought out, and that made things a lot simpler. Once I understood the structure of their meetings, I moved on to the next piece of the puzzle, the workplace. Elena worked in HR. She had access to employee files, internal reports, and confidential evaluations, things normal staff wasn't supposed to see. But people trusted her. They always had. And Daniel, he depended on that trust without even realizing it. I discovered something interesting during my research the night before. Daniel had been disciplined at his previous job for mishandling client information. Nothing major enough to make headlines, but enough to be noted in confidential paperwork, enough to be a red flag if it ever surfaced again. And Elena, blindly trying to impress him, had recently helped him fix a minor issue with his current performance file. I didn't know exactly what she changed, but I didn't need to. What mattered was that she did it, and companies do not appreciate manipulated documents, especially when two employees are involved in something inappropriate. I filed that away for later. Around noon, I received a text from Elena. How are you feeling? Want me to bring anything home? I stared at the message for a few seconds. She sounded genuinely concerned, genuinely caring. It was almost unbelievable how easily she switched between lives. I typed back, just resting. Come home whenever. I knew she wouldn't. Not tonight. Not when Daniel had already asked her to meet. But messages like that proved something important. She still trusted me, still believed I was clueless. That ignorance gave me a massive advantage. The next phase of the plan started at 4:20 p.m. I walked out of my apartment with a small camera no bigger than a lighter, a power bank, and a neutral expression. There was no need for drama, no shaking hands, no adrenaline. Everything felt steady. I arrived near their meeting point, a small private parking lot behind a closed cafe. The owner let employees park there after hours, and the place had one broken security camera that no one ever bothered to fix. An ideal hiding spot for people who thought the world wasn't watching. I placed the camera inside a hollow gap in the fence, angled perfectly toward the spot where they had met before. The device recorded to cloud storage. Even if someone found it, I wouldn't lose anything. I checked the angle. Perfect. Now all I needed was time. I walked away before anyone could notice, blending into the early evening crowd. I didn't follow them. I didn't hover. I wasn't reckless. I went home, made tea, and sat in the dark living room, laptop open, the live feed running quietly in the background. At 8:12 p.m. she appeared. She looked around first. She always did, protective, paranoid, careful, as if she knew she was doing something wrong but convinced herself it wasn't as long as no one saw. Then Daniel walked into the frame, hands in his pockets, acting like he owned the ground he stepped on. They greeted each other quietly, not with a dramatic kiss or anything cinematic, just a small, familiar touch, her hand sliding into his head lowering slightly toward her. Something intimate, something practiced. They stood close, too close, and then came the moment I needed. She leaned her forehead against his chest. He wrapped an arm around her waist. She whispered something. The microphone couldn't pick it up, but Daniel smiled. Not kindly, not lovingly, more like someone who enjoyed the power he had over someone else's world. That was enough. Proof wasn't about drama or passion or catching them in the most explicit moment possible. Proof was about clarity, about being undeniable. I recorded the segment, downloaded it, saved it 3 times. At 8:26 p.m. After 20 minutes of quiet conversation, they left together in his car. I closed the laptop, leaned back on the couch, and exhaled slowly. Phase 1, confirmation. Phase 2, documentation. Phase 3 would be different, darker, more precise. It wasn't about exposing their relationship. It was about dismantling the life they had built on lies, brick by brick, until both of them finally understood what betrayal costs. And I already knew exactly where to begin. I woke before sunrise, not because of nerves, but because my mind had already begun working long before my eyes opened. It wasn't chaos, nor anger. It was clarity, focus, a sense of direction sharper than anything I'd felt in months. Today was the beginning of Phase 3. People think revenge is loud, emotional, impulsive. Real revenge is mathematics, strategy, timing, precision. And the first calculation on my list was simple: expose the cracks they had created themselves. I spent the morning organizing everything I had collected so far. The video from the parking lot, the timeline of their meetings, screenshots of call logs, and messages Elena didn't know I could see through our shared phone account. Nothing illegal, nothing invasive beyond what was already available to me. Just the truth arranged like puzzle pieces snapping into place. By noon, the file was complete, but exposing them outright wasn't the goal. Not yet. The real objective was destabilization. Daniel's career was built on an image: reliable, disciplined, trustworthy. But behind that image was a weakness I had discovered accidentally. He was already on thin ice with HR due to past documentation inconsistencies, a professional euphemism for he lied on paperwork, and someone caught it. The company had let it slide once, but if something similar happened again, they'd bury him quickly. And that was my entry point. I printed my report, not the cheating part, not the personal details, only the professional breach, the altered documents Elena had modified for him, something she should have never touched. I didn't include her name, not directly. I simply wrote, HR personnel may have been influenced, willingly or unwillingly, to adjust his record, a seed of doubt, a question mark large enough to make any manager look twice. I placed the file into a plain envelope. No return address. No handwriting. Clean, professional. At 15:40, I left the apartment. A calm walk, sunlight warming the pavement, the air carrying that cold sharpness of early evening. My heart rate stayed steady. The plan wasn't risky, not if done correctly. The company mailbox sat outside the administrative building, used mainly by couriers. No cameras pointed directly at it. I slipped the envelope inside and walked away, blending into a group of office employees heading toward the metro. Nobody noticed me. Nobody would care even if they did. That part was easy. The difficult part came later. Around 1820, I checked the live feed again. Not because I needed more proof, I already had enough, but because understanding their behavior was crucial for the next steps. Predictability was my greatest weapon. They met again, exactly as expected. Same parking lot, same carelessness, same illusion that their secret world was impenetrable. They talked quietly. Her posture was tense. His was overly confident, almost smug. He touched her shoulder lightly, the way people do when they want to reassure someone they're controlling without making it obvious. There was no affection in it, only ownership. It was strange. Watching them didn't hurt anymore. It didn't sting. It didn't hollow me out. If anything, it clarified something important. I wasn't losing anything worth keeping. I wasn't broken. They were at home. I prepared the next phase. I drafted a message, not to Elena, not to Daniel, but to the company's internal ethics address. A formal tone, anonymous sender, attaching a scanned copy of the same report I had mailed. And again, I didn't mention the affair. This wasn't about personal drama. It was about professional misconduct. Companies forgive messy relationships. They don't forgive manipulated documents. I hit send, a small click, a quiet action, a massive consequence. By 2047, something interesting happened. Elena texted me. I might be home a bit later than usual. Something urgent came up at work. There it was, the lie sliding effortlessly into her message. Like a reflex, I typed back, okay, take your time. She didn't suspect anything, and she wouldn't, not yet. But while she spent her evening with him, somewhere inside that company, someone had already opened the envelope. Someone was already reading the report. Someone was already asking questions. Questions that would eventually lead straight to Daniel. Questions that would expose the tiny fracture he'd tried so hard to hide. I wasn't destroying him. I was simply letting gravity do its job. A lie is like a hairline crack in glass, invisible at first, but spreading with time until the entire surface collapses under its own weight. I went to sleep earlier than usual, feeling something close to peace. Not triumph, not excitement, just quiet, steady certainty. Phase 3 was in motion. Phase 4 would come soon, more direct, more personal, and far more devastating to the foundation of their relationship. But I wasn't rushing. I wasn't reckless. True collapse begins slowly, and then all at once. The morning began without drama, no messages, no unexpected calls, just a strange, heavy quiet that felt like the pause before a storm. I didn't rush anything. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the early light crawl between the buildings across the street. Everything was moving exactly the way it needed to. At 9:12, the first sign appeared. Elena texted me, "Work is chaotic today. Don't wait for me for lunch." Short, abrupt, unusual for her. She wasn't just busy, she was rattled. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. Instead, I checked the company's public staff directory. Daniel's name was still there, but his status, normally green, had switched to gray. Offline, for someone who lived in his inbox. That was rare. Something had already happened, and I hadn't even started the personal part yet. By noon, HR must have confronted him. They wouldn't fire him instantly. They'd investigate. They'd look at the records. They'd compare timestamps. They'd question inconsistencies. They'd talk to people, especially to her. After all, if one person's record was altered, who else had touched it? I didn't need to know the exact details. Results mattered more than process. And results were already visible. At 14:33, I received another message from her. "We need to talk tonight." There it was. The sentence people use when they feel everything slipping. I replied simply, "Okay." Double quotes, no pressure, no emotion, no fear. My calmness would unsettle her more than anger ever could. The rest of the day moved slowly, intentionally. I cleaned the apartment, organized old documents, took a walk. I didn't check the feed. I didn't monitor her. I had enough information for what came next. And the next step wasn't about watching. It was about shifting the ground beneath them. By the time she came home around 1910, she looked exhausted, her shoulders stiff, her eyes unfocused, her voice slightly cracked. She put her bag down carefully, like she was afraid it might break. She didn't greet me with a kiss, not even with a smile. Good. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. Silence stretched out between us, not warm, not comfortable, but sharp like cold air in winter. Finally she said, "There's been an issue at work." I nodded, a neutral, patient gesture. She continued, "They're auditing everything. Someone sent a report anonymously. I don't know who, but they think Daniel falsified documents. And they asked if I had access." Her voice cracked at the end. She wasn't confessing. She wasn't apologizing. She was scared, not of her actions, but of consequences. That told me everything I needed to know. I let the silence sit for a few seconds before responding. "Did you?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know. Maybe I helped him once, but it wasn't serious." I didn't think. I didn't let her finish. "You shouldn't have done that." Not "how could you?" Not "what were you thinking?" Just a simple statement of fact, steady, controlled, unshakable. She looked at me, searching for something in my expression. Anger, maybe, hurt, jealousy, anything. She found nothing, and that terrified her more than rage ever could. "Why are you so calm?" she finally asked. I almost smiled. "Because panic is for people who lose." I wasn't losing. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and said quietly, "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending everything is fine." Her breath hitched, a tiny sound, but loud enough for me to hear. I didn't accuse her. I didn't mention him. I didn't show my cards. Revenge isn't shouting. Revenge is letting someone walk themselves into the truth. She looked down, twisting her fingers together. A sign of guilt, a sign of fear. A sign that the foundation she'd been standing on was collapsing slowly beneath her, exactly as planned. Around 21 o'clock, she went to the bedroom, leaving the door slightly open, an invitation, or maybe an attempt at connection. But I didn't follow. I stayed in the living room, letting her sit with the discomfort she had created. And while she lay there, staring at the ceiling in silence, her phone buzzed once on the table. A message from him. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Her reaction said everything. She flinched. Then she turned the phone face down. Then she pushed it away. The first crack in their little world. Not caused by shouting. Not caused by confrontation. Caused by pressure she never saw coming. By midnight, the apartment was quiet. She didn't come out. She didn't speak again. She just stayed in the dark, trying to understand how everything had shifted in a single day, unaware that this wasn't the end. It was the midpoint, because tomorrow, the real collapse would begin, quietly, inevitably, exactly on schedule.